behind. So I would say that we have a very good customer protections. I compare also with some countries, but how the customers are protected, that's will go to the implementation.
Prof. Johannes, do you agree we have a good standing when it comes to consumer currently, as of now, as we speak today? We have we're making good progress and we're at the right place when it comes to consumer protection and also regulations, the regulators implementing for all the players in the industry. What is your opinion?
Okay, thank you, Ralph. Well, I have a bit different opinion. The consumer protection policies in general, including the financial services, have so far focused on consumer education and literacy. That's the focus. Through the education and consumer literacy in the financial service, it is believed and must be acknowledged that there has been consumer empowerment. This is not wrong, but experience has shown that since the Financial Service Authority, OJK, was established in July 2012, the asymmetry of weak position of financial service consumers compared to the strong position of financial service business actors still exists. Several cases, insurance, mutual funds, online loans, and others prove the asymmetry of the position. The asymmetry condition is getting sharper, especially triggered by the Industrial Revolution 4.0 and the COVID-19 pandemic, which quote unquote forces financial service consumers to immediately adapt their digital transaction skills. Adaptation to the digital process is clearly faster for financial service actors than for the financial service consumers. So policies that trigger this asymmetry position, of course, cannot be maintained if Indonesia is to succeed in fully protecting financial consumers. That's my opinion so far.
Okay. Moving back to Mas Bima now, from the association point of view, what has been, what are the main concerns now? Because you need the consumer's trust with all the members involved in the association. How do you, what's the strategy to enhance consumers' trust that they're protected, that the protection is well implemented, and they know they're going to have, because trust is key here, building trust between the two ends, that it's going to be fair and square, and then they know that they're in a safe place. What's the strategy from the association side, Mas Bima?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Of course, we collaboration with our member to give the customer education. Yeah, we have several event in online and offline to give the how is customer protection. I'm always mention, if we're talking about the growth, the e-commerce, the one of the key, I think 211 most important key is the logistics and the payment. And the payment, we're talking about the trust also. So even though we have a COD, yeah, but now many, because the COD is one of the trick to grab the non-bank population. So when we have the bank population, we try to give the best of the customer protection. They're more easy to pay, they're more easy to use, and then if they easy to use and the customer protection will be achieved. I think in our association, we also working with the collaboration with our member. We have several agenda. I think every 3 months, we're talking about the customer protection, what the current issue, maybe if the last year, the current issue, maybe for example, the COD, and then what's the solution, and then we give like, oh, if you want to the transaction about the COD, this is the way that you must to do, you must pay first, for example, something like that. And then about maybe if we're talking about the issue about the cybersecurity and the data protection, we have a new regulation about the data protection, and then we give the socialization with our member about the data protection. What kind of member must to prepare about this regulation, because this regulation, they have a grace period to become the stated, and then after before the end of the grace period, what kind of member need to prepare in terms of the regulation itself. I think it's Mr. Raf that our association do that.
How much of it is a concern? Because a little bit branching out a bit outside of the fintech, the realm of fintech. We're talking about data privacy. It has no secret. It's been no secret that a lot of data breach has happened. Some hundreds and hundreds of millions of public data has been exposed, going onto the wrong hands. People are concerned. Is my social identity number or my health history status is in the safe hands? That's a bit outside of the fintech, but inside as well, we're talking still about data, and people. We know that data is the new currency as we speak today. But how does let me just frame it to a question like. With the new regulations that you mentioned that's in place, how do you really encourage your members to really build on that? And because people are really concerned, like even like this morning or yesterday, that news that leaked out again, saying that beware, well, my Pertamina is now in my hands. And then beware, Peduli Lindungi is going to be up next. And then, whoa, Peduli Lindungi is everyone's on it. And then it's not really like, how safe are we? It's always been a sensitive issue. When I put, why do you want to know my number? Why do you want to know my this and that? And how much is that being talked about and then being discussed among members in the association? What steps are being done here? Must be
yeah. Of course, the first of the step, we must know how much how the regulation to become the straight, because the regulation, they have a penalty, they have the sanksi. Sanksi is mean penalty that right. Can give to the company, right? And then I think the first we must aware even then the company, because they're processing the data. So our member is processing the data. And if you processing the data, what is your obligation? And you must to do. Maybe the first, they must have the DPO, data privacy officer. They must prepare. So after that, we must have the knowledge with the customer. For example, if we have the right to be forgotten in our regulation. So we can asking about the maybe the processing data. Oh, I don't want my data over there. You can delete it. My data is the right of obligation. What your privacy, and then your company must to do, because you are the processing the data. I think that's our association do with the socialization with the company and with the government, because we invited the government to explain, oh, this is the regulation, this is do and don'ts. Please, if you do, you must prepare the DPO. If you don't, if you still do what is done, you can have the penalty. I think that's we must to prepare. And then the second question I think is interest about the, I think my data is everywhere, my data is leaked everywhere. I think the first important wall is ourselves. Are we still using the password is our birthday, for example? Are we still using the password is very weak? I think we must asking the question to ourselves. So don't be surprised if maybe, for example, my friend upload their name of the son, the birthday, and everything. So they become the leak of the data. I think that's the most knowledgeable. First, we must know about this regulation is very deep at the first time, Mr. Raf. Thank you.
I think that falls into the category of consumer literacy, like you touched upon that. So talk about Sendit. How closely are Sendit and IDEA are working together, or trying to, let's have a discussion on this subject?
Yeah, so Zendit is mostly governed by Bank of Indonesia, some of our products through OJK as well. So unfortunately, not a lot of overlap with Pabima, but would love to have a chat a little bit more. We do serve some e-commerce players and some marketplaces online. So with all of our merchants, we often work together to really figure out, number one, hey, KYC information, right? Because oftentimes when it comes to this is more so about fraud than data security. Oftentimes individuals or syndicates would use B2C platforms to be able to take money from your consumer, right? So we work a lot with, hey, how do we figure out KYC together, especially again, when information is a little bit more scarce here. Yes, there's a lot of data leakage about consumer potentially, but actually, ironically, when it comes to verifying information, it's very difficult still here, right? So that's one part. The second part is really observing behaviors on these platforms, working together again, figuring out things like transaction limits and all the likes is super duper important, so that you can cap and you can prevent or discourage individuals from doing fraudulent activities. But again, I think you made a really great point. It's all about balance, right? Digitalization is not an option, it's a must. So we have to be supporting the merchants, the platforms to be able to transform digitally. So I mean, you can make it so difficult to transact online, people just don't, but that's not the whole purpose, right? You have to be able to make people continue to be comfortable to transact online, but to do so in a safe manner. Now, when it comes to consumer data protection, of course, we get some of that information ourselves as well, right? So we do have to abide by regulation, segregating this information, protecting them. Obviously, there's a lot of importance in keeping the data onshore rather than offshore as well, right? So those things are extremely important. And we do this ourselves and work together with our merchants as well to ensure that consumer data are continue to be protected. Yeah.
Now, doing all those things, Prof. Johannes, and you previously mentioned COVID. Now, talk about the past 2 years. Well, we're still in it as we're easing up, but on one side, business has been going really well, I assume. I can picture that what we thought about was going to happen 10 years from now is already happening now because of how our day-to-day has been conducted since 2020 up until now. Before that, it's been like a foreign concept to be able to work at home, from home. But now everybody is reluctant to go back to work offline because they've been too accustomed with their own personal private workstations. But from the e-commerce side, from the platform side, that generates a lot of, I would just say, activities. Let's just put it that way. But with that comes a lot of challenges, of course. Now we talk about more subscribers, business is going on a growth on a larger scale, but of course, you got to handle more data now. You got to protect more data. And what was the challenge besides the blessings that have been coming your way from the Sendit's perspective since 2020?
Yeah, definitely. I think for us, one big challenge is always scaling. What happens when suddenly a huge influx of transactions come on board on our platform? So that's always something that we need to deal with. And when it comes to analyzing that information, to be sure that transactions are legitimate, to make sure that for example, during COVID, I think the number of merchants that signed up to our platform went up to something like 10,000 merchants a month, up from maybe 1,000 or so, right? So we do a lot of KYC verification, sort of with humans as well, not just information, because I think especially in a place like Indonesia, it's important to have spot checks to be able to process things. There are just certain things where we have to look at, right? Sometimes that humans are still more sophisticated than engines at this point, which is great. But when you're going from 1,000 to 10,000, how do you cope with that? We don't even have enough people who are doing merchant onboarding to be able to keep up with all that. So I think that's been a really big challenge. So improving processes, again, automating as much of it as possible so you can just spot check at the very end, right? Because again, we're very smart here in Indonesia. Sometimes you're using legitimate ID card, but then merchants are starting to buy not just the ID card, but the selfies as well, right? To be able to come on board. We're really, really smart. So I think keeping up with that is extremely, extremely challenging and something that we have to really be on alert every day. Now, when it comes to protecting consumer, again, you can't do it yourself. It has to be a whole ecosystem, right? We do sometimes use third-party platforms to be able to flag blacklisted merchants or individuals. I think that's important to remember for the industry. You can't do all this alone. You made a really important point that when transactions increase, there's so much out there to be able to process. Sometimes you don't even know what to begin, right? So it's important to tap into experts. It's important to tap into partners and do this together in order to be able to continue to protect the consumer.
Prof. Johannes, I'd like to go back to you as an expert on this and as also an observer on this. Still on that angle that how things have been sped up so much more since COVID began. What has been the challenge from the policymaker side to keep up with this, to regulate market conduct and consumer protection? What do you think? What's your take?
Okay, thank you. As I mentioned before, also in many occasions, I always campaigning about the shift of the focus of business actors, namely from the education and literacy of consumer to the market conduct of the business actors. That's very, very important because after the COVID-19 and also in the Industrial Revolution 4.0, the position of the consumer is weaker than before. That's why I always campaign in OJK and NPE and also in the Ministry of Commerce, that we have to shift the focus of the how to protect the consumer, namely shift to the market conduct of the business actors. There are two important things that we have to focus in the business actors market conduct of the business actor. The first one is the massive use of the digital standards agreement by the financial service business actors. As you know that if we hear about the contract in our mind, it must be a negotiation between the two parties. But nowadays, that 99% of the agreements is designed and used by the business actors, and the consumer only take it or leave it that contract. That's what I mean. What I meant with the standardized agreements. So in this occasion, I suggest that the standardized agreement after the Industrial Revolution 4.0, it becomes digital. So digital standardized agreement. That's more difficult to have the consumer protection on it. That's why I have urged to business experts and also to the government that we have to put the emphasis of the consumer protection into the market conduct of the business actors. And the second one, the very important, maybe you know that many of the business actors, if they found the fail of the payment of the consumer, they are using the what we call debt collector. That's also we have to mention that the business actor should move the conduct, the market conduct, into the new regulation of the OJK that's regulate the business the debt collector. That's the debt collector. So there are two kind of market conduct which should be supervised by the regulator by the government, and also to be regulated in the legislation. That's my point of view. So let's focus on the supervision of the market conduct of the business actors, not only to the how to educate and literate the consumer, the consumers. Thank you.
Arun, what do you think about standardization? If you have a take on that, and also following up on what you mentioned before about playing catch up. It's always been the readiness of especially the regulators. They're always like one or even sometimes more than two steps behind. How they keep up with this, and what Prof. Johannes has mentioned from his concerns.
Yeah, I think I believe what Prof. Johannes was saying are very good. It's the market conduct is important, but we also have to remember that it's not easy. And back to my point earlier, we have to balance between the growth of the sector of the digital economy and the protection of the customers. Sometimes I think the problem is very often the business actors or the companies, I would say, they use their standard. They think that they are already protecting the customers. So if we move to the other side of the table, which are the customers, then it's probably not enough. And I found something quite interesting that I look in UK consumer duty. They have what they call the cross-cutting rules. And when I read that, it's one, they said that you have to act in good faith. toward retail customers. And we have that already in POJK 6, 2022, we have that, right? And then the second point of the cross-cutting rules is to avoid foreseeable harm to retail customers. So the angle is from the customer side rather than from the, so you really have to put yourself in the shoes of the customers. And the third is, and this is on financial literacy, but also really why you are, especially for fintech, there's a lot of things is relating to the goal of the customers. So it says that the companies, the providers, they have to enable and support retail customers to pursue their financial objectives. And understanding that require a lot of efforts. And the technology may be there, but then whether the system is ready, whether the human resources are ready, that's another question. So I guess it's evolving, and we have to continuously look into this. What is right today? And I agree with the other speakers, but we are talking about now. What is good for now may not be good tomorrow, may not be enough next year. So we have to keep looking into that and catching up.
As one of the companies, as mentioned by Mas Harun, what's your take on that?
I mean, I completely agree. I was just gonna chime in. Look, this is Indonesia. We have about 17,000 islands, right? The consumers who are transacting digitally or who are doing activities online are not just like you and me or everybody in this room, right? We're relatively comfortable to go online. We understand some of the rules, regulations, some of the risks of coming online. But you have to remember, there are people who are out in other, smaller cities, out even sometimes in village. I'm pretty amused that you can be coming from a very small town or a village and you still have a mobile phone. You can still, interact on Instagram, Facebook, whatever else. You can even still buy stuff online, right? The mind boggles. So I think we have to acknowledge that there are a lot of complexities in order to be able to implement sufficient customer protection in a place like Indonesia. Coupled with that, digital transformation is accelerated by 10x, 100x because of COVID. I think everybody in the industry, it's not just about us, right? The payment player. It's not just about regulators. It's not about academics. It's not just about the associations. Everybody has to work together and come up and agree to one policy that's suitable. You're right, just for today, right? And then there needs to be an understanding that things change very rapidly. What works today may not work tomorrow, right? For example, I think a long time ago, a fraud was all about transfer pulsa, mama perlu pulsa, right? Hi, I'm your mom, I need whatever, right? And now it's even more sophisticated, right? People are getting transferred money for a loan, they didn't even get a loan, right? Your information are being used by other folks who are doing fraudulent activities. People are selling mobile phones with registrations to be a Gojek driver, whatever. It's an extremely complex topic, I think, and it requires everybody in the industry to take part in order to help with consumer protection.
Like I said earlier, that we're living in such an easy time. Everything is so accessible but you're just walking on a thin line between safety and danger. Because on one side, like who doesn't want to live a life where you don't even have to get out of bed and you can do so much with just what's on the tip of your finger. But on the other hand, you had run the risk that people are spying on your buying habits, on your interests, your social circles. That how comfortable are you with that? Because with one comes also the other. It's interesting that you mentioned the vastness, the complexity of we talk about Indonesia, right? with different varying cultures, social education factors into this, and also age factor, even like you mentioned the pulsa thing. It's part of literacy, and talk about consumers being protected. It has always been a sketchy issue here, even before. I remember even before the advent of the digital age. It's as easy when I was growing up. Like cash transactions, when you're at the counter and then you're being given the option, you're supposed to get small change like 100 or 50 rupiahs in coins, and then you're being told, I'm sorry, running out of change. Can we just exchange that with candies? And you can take, eventually you grow up and you think about, am I being treated fairly here? Because talk about fairness to protect the consumers. And we have the YLKI, the Indonesian Consumers Protection Agency, but somehow that has always been criticized and not been given an easy time, because they also have their hands full, because there's always been kind of like bias between the consumers. Is always they have never been like really, I've never been I never felt really protected. And now comes this so-called abstract world, this metaverse where so much money being transactioned and all that. And how am I supposed to feel protected in that? Let's talk about be more humane here. Like Mas Harun, for example, as a customer, as a consumer, all the laws, all the chapters and verses, regulations aside, what's your experience overall? Do you feel like you're safe enough as we speak now?
My standard, yeah. Well, by my standard, yes. I feel that that
it's going well.
It's going well. I'm adequately protected. Of course, then there room for improvements. And the devil is in the details, of course. But generally, if you ask, yes. But I agree with Tessa. I think we have to think that in Indonesia you have different groups, and you said as well, age. The way my mother is doing transaction will be different than if I do it, and with my sons, they are much more literate with that, and so it's very difficult. You cannot have a something that is for everyone, and that's why I believe looking from the consumer side is very important, because what is good for me may not be good enough for my driver, for example.
I also concur with Mas Harun. Overall, I've been very careful, quite literate, because I believe we're pretty much at the same age. We've been through all stages of technological development, as you say. We're from the fixed lines to the phone cards to the pagers and to the 56K modem connections, and you have to download a JPEG. It takes 10 hours. We've been through all that. So now with the advent of the smartphones and the accessibility that we enjoy now, we're quite pragmatic. We know the safe boundaries and how far should we stretch it in terms of trusting our data to the other side. But I know it hasn't been easy on the other age factors, especially for the seniors. I also, overall, I feel safe too, goodness grace, for up until now, because we've been also quite careful with how we conduct ourselves as well. But Prof. Johannes, for example, like as a customer, do you feel like you're within the boundaries of those regulations that protect the customers? I know you're going to hit that big age tomorrow, and then and it's how much are you conducting yourself in the digital transaction world, and how safe do you feel?
Well, okay. I'm not proposing my opinion for myself, but now, as you maybe know, that I'm in charge in the process of amendment of Law of Consumer Protection number 8, 1999. So it's very interesting what Tessa mentioned, that we have 17,000 islands. We have 270 million people. And also we have more than 500 kabupaten and kota. And with a different education, different social status of the population. That's why we in Ministry of Commerce has already designed what we call the online dispute resolution. So we divide online dispute resolution into 2 stages. The first stage is what we call the online complaint handling. So if you find the consumer who feel damages from the by the business actors, he or she should go back to the business actors first. So that is what we call the complaint handling process. And then if the business actor doesn't react to the complaint, so it becomes what we call disputes. And then if it's already become a dispute, you can go to the online dispute resolution, ODR. The ODR divided into 2 kinds. The first is litigation through the court, and the second one is to the what we call the alternative dispute resolution. For instance, in the financial service area is what we call LAPS, Lembaga Alternatif Penyelesaian Sengketa, which already work good in nowadays. So that's what I mentioned about the market conduct of the business actor. So if we back to the what we call the standardized agreement, which is used by the business actor, in that standard agreement should pension should write the how to resolve if the consumer become out of has a damage from the business actors. So that's what we plan and has already discussed with all the ministry, maybe with 6 or 7 meetings with all the ministry and OJK and BI, Financial Service Authority and Bank Indonesia. That's what we plan in the Ministry of Commerce. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take that as the plans moving forward, because we have to wrap up in like 5 to 10 minutes. So I'll leave the rest the 3 speakers to come up with summarizing points, and then moving forward, what can we do better as we move forward. And also, I'd like to factor in when you talk about market conduct, if you may, can factor in, especially Tessa, the rising prices, the ongoing inflation now that of course affects your day-to-day operations, and what does that factor into how the market conduct and the protection of consumers' rights moving forward from this moment as we ease out of the pandemic. This is still ongoing, but things have changed, dynamics and all. I'll start first with Mas Bima from the association as your closing statement to summarize our talk this morning, Mas Bima.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ralph. Yeah, if we're talking about the customer protection, we're talking about the collaboration, not only the association, not only the player, is all of us. And then we calling about what kind of customer protection we can do better together in terms of the platform service, in terms of the payment, in terms the regulation. If we working together, we hope the customer can feel do better to more shopping, of course, in online, and then the transaction in economy digital in Indonesia can be keep growing. I think that's for me. Thank you.
Okay, and good luck with the association and all the members. And Tessa, what's your take to close it out this morning?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to reframe this a little bit, right? Because we're talking about consumer protection. It's all about fear of your information getting leaked, fear about fraud, fear about, your identity being stolen and whatever else, right? But I want to remind everyone that tech can be here for good, that the information that platforms get from your behavior and whatever else is beneficial for the country, beneficial for you, right? I remember a time where there was no Google Maps. It can take me half an hour, 1 hour, 3 hours to go from SCBD to Kuningan, right? Because we're not informed. Or a time where to be able to order food, sometimes it's raining, you cannot go out and buy food and you're just gonna starve for the rest of the day. And now you can get that delivered easily. So tech is a force for good. It helps our economy to keep growing, right? Look at COVID, when everyone was at home because of tech platforms, Indonesian economy didn't get hit as hard as it could be. So I want to remind everyone of that before we talk about, consumer data protection. Again, I think what's really important right now is getting our consumers educated, because without that, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for any industry player to be able to protect them, right? Because there are a lot of things, like I said, a lot of fraud comes from push, meaning consumers are willingly giving out money. A lot of data leakage, again, is about consumers willingly, right, giving their information away. Even from something as simple as, like, I'm sure I can ask people here, when you're putting in passwords with numbers, how many of you are putting in 1, 2, 3 at the end of your password, right? How many people are putting in their dog's names, your kid's name, your mom's name, right? So again, consumer education is extremely, extremely important. Being self-aware of what's out there, right? That's number one. Number two, you mentioned about the recession coming. We have to be a bit more aware now, because when a recession is incoming, a lot of people will struggle more. There are a lot of layoffs everywhere, right? So people are going to try to get money elsewhere. So fraudulent activities are probably going to start to increase. Again, it's actually still a very small fraction of transactions. Most people are actually wanting to transact online, but just being more aware. Like, as a consumer, again, jangan ketipu, right? Don't get swayed by, if it's too good to be true, it's going to be too good to be true, right? Be a little bit smarter about it, right? For industry players, it's about continuing with your regulatory tech, as well as risk technology, which means, understanding how to do KYC digitally, how to do transaction monitoring in the right way. So we're understanding merchant behavior. So I think those are the key takeaways from me. But again, I want to highlight that for the most part, tech is good. Tech is good for the economy. Tech is good for us. So let's not come from a place of fear when we're transacting online, but come from a place where you're educated about transacting online.
Tech is good, and tech is here to stay, and just about moving forward, making things better. Thank you very much, Tessa. And Mas Harun, final notes?
I would like to pick up from there. I think we cannot avoid the digitalization, and that is something that will be here, and that's our future. So we have to be very careful, and I'll give you an example, like buy now, pay later, for example. That's new, and then now, as I agree with Tessa, now it may create problems, and we see in some people already incurred 30 million debt already because of that. So a couple of challenges will be there, and then once we solve those challenges, there will be more challenges. So I'd like to focus on that. I think the first one is the protection of consumer data is still very important, and And that is the you cannot compare big companies and small companies. So the IT system, the human resources will be still challenging, and that's one challenge that we have to think about. Second is the accessibility to high quality technology. Big companies, they have no problem with that, but how about small companies? How do they really implement those high tech technology? They cannot access
Fairness
that.
for all.
Yes, that's we have to be realistic that that's not everyone can afford that. And the third one, which is probably in Indonesia not really a focus, but something that we have to think about, is research and development. And R&D is for digital economy, I think, become very, very important because innovations, you will have innovations. And just a simple statistic that I see from Kearney, we only spend 0.2% of our GDP on R&D. So we have to increase that. And I think that's probably a homework for all the players. Thank you.
Well, we'll just end on that. And I hope the talking points that have emerged this morning on this session, I know it's not long, but I hope it's enough to generate some new values or insights and inputs that can help us improve moving on from here point moving forward. Thank you very much. Thank you, Prof. Johannes Gunawan, Mas Bima Laga, Tessa Wijaya, and Mas Harun Rasodiputro for sharing with us this morning. My name is Ralph Nampubolon. Again, I thank you very much, and also thank you for our online viewers via Zoom joining us this morning. Thank you for your time, and we do hope that you enjoy the rest of the summit on day 2 today. Good morning. Om Swastiastu. Thank you.
Okay, we have a round of big applause. Thank you very much, Mr. Ralph Nampubolon, for successfully leading the discussion today. Ladies and gentlemen, for all the speakers and moderator, we would like to invite you to take a photo session together this morning to commemorate this special event.
How do we take this photo? Are we?
Yes, please take a position here. Yeah,
It's
together
fun
with
here.
the speakers who are joining us virtually today. Yes, maybe we can take a safe position. Yeah, so we don't block the view of the speakers who join us virtually today. All right. Let me ask the photographer, are we in the right angle right now, the right position? Oh, okay. All right, everybody ready? Give your best smile. Okay, maybe together we can say Bali, yeah? Since we are here in Bali, yeah. Are we? All right, together on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, can we have a round of big applause for all of the speakers and moderator? What a very productive morning and a very insightful discussion. We take a lot of notes, important notes, and learned a lot of things from the speakers and also the moderator for today's discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, before we wrap things up, please allow me to inform you that we would like also to invite you to join us to attend our plenary session at the ballroom at 1:30 Bali time after lunch. We will have important session with these speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, I will like to inform you that we will have Mr. Airlangga Hartanto together with us, Ibu Sri Mulyani Indrawati, Mr. Mahendra Siregar, Destri Damayanti, Pandu Patria Syahrir, and also we will have Mari Epangestu, Mr. Chang Peng Zhao, Ganesh Rengaswamy, Rizky Wisnun Toro, Bapak Joni G. Plate, Profesor Dr. Zudan Arif Fakrullah, Samuel Abriani Pangerapan, Edward Low, and also we will have Leslie Go. On this afternoon, we also have Arsyad Rashid, Mr. Diki Wijaya, Wilson Beh, Amor Maklang, Ruben Lim, and also Eric Buntoro. So we would like to invite you to participate on our plenary session this afternoon. And ladies and gentlemen, that's all for today. Thank you so much. We thank each and every one of you for being here and participate on our session today. We see you in the upcoming plenary session of Indonesia Fintech Summit 2022. Lastly, please allow me to close in Balinese way. Om Santi 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 Om. Have a great day, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy Bali. Thank you.